Welcome back to Digital Leap, the podcast where we help businesses and societies leap into a digitally superior future. Today, I'm joined by Diego Torres, a visionary technologist and entrepreneur who is at the forefront of artificial intelligence and ethical tech development. He's not just a tech enthusiast, he's also a filmmaker, a creative thinker, and someone who values teamwork and creativity as much as he does solving complex technical challenges. Currently, Diego and his team are working on Jada, a groundbreaking level 3 artificial generative AI and intelligence that aims to revolutionize the way we interact with technology. We're excited to have him here to share his insights and vision for a digitally superior future. Diego, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Diego.
Hi, guys. I'm really happy to be here, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we will. And I'm also joined today. Donish is subbing in for Omar on the podcast today. So thank you so much for joining us. And so, Diego, I just want to jump into the first interview question. So, Diego, you have a unique background that combines technology and creativity. Can you tell us more about your journey and what inspired you to venture into both tech and film? Just want to ask some more personal questions about your background.
Yeah. So, it all started when I was since I can remember, right? My father was an engineer. He used to do a lot of stuff. The coding, the programming, the architecture, everything, right? And he pretty much taught me everything that I know. And he comes from a very technical family as well. So everyone on his side would also teach me here's this for example, here's this this book to learn how to program in Pascal or binary or whatever, and I was like, okay. So that was pretty much like the focus of my training and education since I can remember. And I remember starting to work at this tech firm when I was 16. I was so young, 16. Oh God! But the culture with technology is that sometimes it can be very unflexible. Sometimes people forget that they're humans and that there's other ways to solve things, not just with numbers and formulas. And that's when I needed not a break. I've never quit tech, but I needed something else, right? And I remember that I got arthritis. I got arthritis because I was just on the computer so much. It's crazy. So I was like, well, I've got to do something in the meantime. My arthritis situation gets better. I'm gonna do art. So I bought myself one of these things, these little camera things, to just experiment with photography. My grandfather was also a photographer, so I kind of had it in me, I guess. And then I got kind of not bored, but taking a picture every second is cool, but film is like 24 pictures in a second, so that was like the next challenge. So I did that. But eventually I got tired of that also, because the problem with the arts is that sometimes people become unpractical, in the sense that...
What sense do they become unpractical? What does that mean?
For example, when I was in film school, I had friends that wanted to. There's nothing wrong about that, but I had friends that they were trying to make like the next Star Wars, and they were trying to do it with like $1. Okay. And then they would get mad when it didn't work out, and they would let out those insecurities and those frustrations on their teammates that were actually there giving them their time to make things happen, to help them achieve their vision. And they started getting really toxic because of people like that. You're giving your time and your energy to help someone, and then they're just biting your hand or mistreating you and mistreating the people around you. And And then that's when I was like, okay, well, I think I've learned what I needed to learn from the film industry, right? I learned creativity, I learned flexibility, adaptation. And then it was in 2017. I was in Toronto back then in Canada, and I remember that I saw this publication on this website. Maybe you guys know it, but maybe I'm not going to say which one it is. Engadget. Have you heard of Engadget, or is it not? Is it not a thing anymore?
I haven't heard of any. Have you?
No, I haven't heard of it either.
Well, it's this tech publication. It used to be really big years ago. I haven't been up to date, but I remember seeing this article on their website, something about machine learning model beats human at chess, but that's all it can do. General intelligence is still 100 years away, or 50 years away, or God knows how long it was.
Yeah.
And
So how have you seen it, especially when you first dove into the film industry? How have you seen, to the extent which your limitations, right? You talked about your friends trying to build Star Wars off of $1. How have you seen that, impact your work and the innovative side of the tech landscape, knowing your limitations?
there's this thing called frugality and learning how to work on a shoestring budget. And I was always focused on the production side. I was always the producer. I very rarely directed things. That's not true. I did direct some things, but I was mostly focused in production, logistics, the contracts, the resources, everything. Just understanding everything and moving them in a way that it makes sense and that it happens. Sometimes you have, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000, and it's your responsibility to make something happen with that money. You can't be just like, oh well, this isn't enough money. It's not going to happen. No, you need to get creative, and you need to maximize the impact that every single dollar is going to have in the project. And it's not just the money; it's also people's energy and their time. Which is even more important than whatever paper you're holding, right? And that's kind of like what film taught me, to be very mindful of these things, and apply that creativity in the tech industry, because in the tech industry, something that we faced a lot when we were dealing with clients at the tech firm or whatever, or with cybersecurity things, is for example, I'm the client, right? I'm the client. I'm like, hey, I'm having this trouble. I need to geofence these territories, and I need to understand what kind of data is coming in, and I need to mine it, and blah blah blah. And then the tech firm is like, well, how much money do you have? And then the client is like, well, I have $100,000, right? And then the tech firm is like, well, get out of here. That's not enough money for us. Just goodbye. And then they'll just, and then that's it, right? And then they'll just leave. There's rarely a culture of, well, let's try to make something work with this budget. Let's try to figure things out and help each other grow. And then, as we grow, then there'll be more opportunity to win more or whatever. It's
Yeah. I also wanted to touch just a quick follow-up as well to that, the aspect of the frugality or the feasibility is also the creative part. I know you touched heavily on how you learned, specifically said you learned how to be creative. What does that mean? Maybe it's a more philosophical question, but at least personally for me, coming from a technical background, it seems like you as well. What does it mean to learn? Is it actually a skill you can learn, or does it come from mentorship? How did that happen for you?
the creativity stuff.
Yeah.
It's really complicated, but basically it was, you need to first you need to have a I guess you could be you need to have a vision of what you want to bring into reality, right? And sometimes that's really hard, because you won't know what you want to create until you see it in your mind and you understand how it works.
Right.
And then it's not just that, it's also giving yourself the time and having patience on yourself to be able to just, write it down in a way that people understand it. And then once you're able to understand that yourself and explain it to people, and then reach an understanding as to, okay, how are we going to like create this, then that's when, you know, things start coming into reality. So I think that creativity is having, first, it's like allowing yourself the time to like understand exactly what it is that you want to build, and two is having the patience to bring it into reality and explaining it in a way that people understand, right? And then that way you're not just some crazy guy saying things, right? But yeah, that's I think that's it. But maybe you're looking for another question, or maybe you were looking for another answer. But
that explained it perfectly, because I pretty much I asked briefly just because especially coming from I'd call it the sciences or the engineering aspect, we always hear of creativity, and especially in the past few episodes of this podcast.
And especially given the fact that we're Brown students as well. I mean, we hear over and over again, what makes us so special is our ability to use the humanities and the STEM, combine them together and think differently. So I think that's been a major theme of our podcast so far, and talking a lot about the human centric as element as well in technology, and which is really why I'm fascinated by your work in both tech and film, and kind of the convergence of those two fields as well. So I wanted to segue a bit into your current project right now. So Jada, so it's an ambitious endeavor to create a post-human artificial intelligence. First of all, I just want to hear your motivation. What motivated you to undertake this challenge? And secondly, how do you envision Jada's role in shaping our future?
I've seen a lot of people die because doctors, they get the test results, and then they're like, well, this is cancer. You need cancer treatment, right? And then they'll give cancer treatment to the patient, and then a week before the patient dies, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't cancer. It was a problem in your pituitary gland. You really didn't have cancer. We've been wasting 8 months of your life giving you treatment for a disease you don't have, right? And these kinds of things, shouldn't happen, right? And then I've seen a lot of architects, their buildings, just crumble because they didn't do math properly, right? And then they're like, well, I didn't use whatever software architects use to design and have design the thing with a pillar in the middle so it doesn't fall. I forgot to do that, and that resulted in people dying because the ceiling didn't have any support. And next question, right? That's how they are. And I'm not saying that we humans are flawed, but it got me thinking. Like I was talking about that article in Engadget that I saw 6 years ago. And I was like, well, really? Like, we don't have a level 3 AI yet? We don't have AGI yet? Like, why not, right? And then I was like, well, let's make it happen, Like, let's make it happen by the end of the next decade, by the end of 2030. And then that's when we got it, when we started working, like my engineer friends and I, my programming friends, my architect friends, like we all just gathered together, and just to see what needed to happen, right? And I mean, it was difficult at first, right? Like, starting is always the most difficult part, but then once it's once you start, it's just like second nature, And it took us 3 years to understand if it was even going to be possible within, with what we were doing. It was during the pandemic when we decided that yes, it's possible. It's possible within our lifetime, and it's even sooner. Like, it can happen sooner than 2030. We don't need to wait that long. And we just continued working on the architecture. We continued working on the code base, on creating an ethical framework for training. Because people nowadays, they just they just grab whatever training data, and they don't make sure that it's like properly balanced, and that way it's inclusive and unbiased. And well, I mean, there's like a lot of things that go into building this thing, right? It's not just, oh yes, we're just gonna build a general AI and that's it, you know. Like it needs to be very carefully measured. It's a very carefully measured formula. So we're really close to having the prototype ready. We're really close to having a prototype ready, but that's like another question, I think, maybe. Did I even answer your question right
No,
now?
yeah, of course. I mean, the important part was your motivation. I think that you really touched on the motivation of being
Yeah.
able to solve those problems that sometimes are just left, by human error. And actually, I wanted to touch on one point you mentioned, that building of the ethical framework. So this may be more of a philosophical question, but so many times we as humans, we even question our own ethics. There's no agreement on ethics. How exactly are you building that ethical framework? And then how is that affecting the decision-making process and interaction of the AI with the humans? So just the question is, how are you building that ethical framework?
So, for example, ethics and morals are pretty much they're pretty much rule books to not hurt people, and they take on other forms, right? Some people call them laws. Some people call them principles. I don't think that unless you have like some really weird something going on with your brain, but I don't honestly think that no human is born being evil or with the intention of cannibalizing other humans to for personal gain or hurting people out of just sheer malice, right? Those things are taught. Those things are taught to us, and the same way that us humans have the capacity to be productive, healthy members of society, well, so will these machines, right? People are very fearful of AI going crazy or taking our jobs or misaligning or even this other thing, just system error and then causing a really big disaster in its wake. But that's because the same way that us humans have the capacity to be raised in a certain way, machines, they could be just programmed from the start to not function properly, very similar to what's happening with, well, not what's happening, what happened to blockchain. Blockchain is a technology built for good, but people decide to use it for whatever is on the news, on the bad news, right? So how do we design a healthy, ethical, and the moral framework is by listening, right? We pay very close attention to things like privacy, in terms of like data, data consent, like who has access to my data? Do I have the right to do I have the right to request my data to be deleted off of this platform or the server? Do I have the right to have this data encrypted and safe, or is it going to be like out there in the public for everyone to see, right? So, for example, in the European Union, there's this thing called the GDPR, which stands for, I think it stands for General Data Protection Regulation. It's pretty much a law that says data that belongs to European citizens has to stay within the European Union. It can't go out. Sorry, thank you. That's pretty much what it says, right? And you can't be selling the data, like if it's data belonging to people in Spain or Switzerland or whatever, you can't be out there selling it like if it were, donuts in the street, you can't, and the fines are really big. They're like 37 million euros.
Wow. No one
So
can say that at all. Yeah.
yeah, so we listen to these things, and the U.S. has this thing called the Weapons Export Control Act. I think it's called the Weapons Export Control Act. And it has like its own moral standing, right? So we listen to these things, and that's how we build it. Yeah.
Well, got it. I also wanted to touch on, I feel like ethics and morals depends on who you ask across the world. And I know, you mentioned that you listen, but considering that, that Jada and other learning techniques are going to be, further developed across time, how adaptable do you think it is to that ethics and time? Like, for example, let's say in 10 years, another type of data that used to be, okay to mine or to collect now becomes, immediately like you're not allowed to. Do you feel that Jada is adaptable to the time and to the morals and ethics of that time frame?
Yeah. So we're designing it with the mindset that the only way to keep it from becoming obsolete is if we humans relinquish the responsibility to update it. What that means is if it's just us, it's designers or programmers or whatever you want to call it, or humans in general, the ones in charge of updating it, it's not fair for people. So, for example, the GDPR is there in the European Union, but before them, there wasn't a regulation in place that would protect data owners in other countries, right? And that caused a lot of trouble for some people. Maybe you remember some of these data leaks. I'm not going to say which ones, but sometimes it takes us humans a long time to like reprogram something or patch something or but there's this thing called recursive self-improvement that we're building into our AI, so it'll just update itself, right? That way it doesn't become obsolete and it keeps up with the times, right? So if there's a group of humanity that develops a bit faster, well, it'll make sure that the other group doesn't get left behind and that they have the same advantage per se. So
love to hear that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask a little bit more on Jada specifically, and with its potential, your ideas for Jada as well. So what are some potential applications that you foresee Jada in various industries? I know you mentioned architecture and in medicine as well, but what are your ideas surrounding Jada and its implications in industries?
We're designing our AI so it's pretty much general purpose, right? You'll be able to use it for pretty much anything as long as you're not hurting another human being, right? So the applications are limitless. But just an example, I was just speaking with some really major manufacturing companies in China that want to have our AI help them design spaceship parts, right?
Wow.
They're like a really big challenge is like designing spaceships in a way that they don't burn in re-entry. So for example, like let's imagine this is not a spaceship. This is a solid state drive.
Looks like a spaceship to me.
Yeah, it's an SSD, but let's use our imagination, right? And say it's a spaceship. If I had another prop, I would, but I don't. Anyway, so if it just enters like this into the atmosphere, it's gonna burn up, right? Because it doesn't have any thermal insulation. There's nothing protecting it from our atmosphere. But that's because just look at this geometry. This geometry it's just very friction. Like it just causes a lot of friction. Like the air is flowing like this, and So a challenge that they're having, and a major challenge in aerospace, is figuring out the geometry for vehicles that produce less friction. That way there's no drag, and then that way they're able to go faster, and the less friction, the less heat, less burning. So that's an application that they want to that they want to have the AI help them with in the short term. And what else is there? What else have people been booking time in the calendar to talk about?
That's truly is inspiring, though. Your work with modifying spaceships. So
like honestly, like when I started the technology, I honestly wasn't expecting that. I was, but I wasn't. So it's kind of like a dream come true. But
yeah.
But it's also like, oh God, how ready are we for this?
Exactly. It's a huge responsibility of wow, now you're going to be designing, your AI is going to be designing a spaceship, making sure it doesn't burn on impact of our atmosphere. That's obviously a huge accomplishment, but also a huge responsibility. and
It
that's
is.
inspirational.
It is actually. So someone was asking me the other day, like 2 days ago, on a Saturday night. They were like, "What happens if your machine messes up, Diego? Like, what if it
That's
like
a
what
that's a very good question to ask. Who's
like
liable? Who's what? Where's the legal consequences?
the reality is that I mean, the regulations are very new. You know, they're just starting to emerge, right? So it's going to take a while for there to be like a clear answer, but until the day that until the day that I think that until the day comes when people stop listening to me and they start listening to our machine and they start doing what the machine says and not the human, until that moment the responsibility is going to be on us humans. So if our machine ever messes up, I mean, it's going to be me. I'm going to be the person liable until I can prove, or until the machine can prove that it's solely the one taking the decisions and deciding what the path is to move forward. And yeah, it's like a combination of that. But
That's
you know, like,
no, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, you didn't interrupt. No, tell me.
No, I was just saying, it's scary to imagine that one day, you're developing the AI, but at some point it's going to be liable for itself.
Right.
That's just a scary thought to think of, and that's what you're talking about with people afraid of AI taking over the world,
Right.
and you building that ethical framework. I think that this is a very interesting discussion as we move into, especially recently, as we move into the acceleration of AGI
And the adoption of these technologies.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think. I think that technology is here to help us, but we can't just say, "Oh, it didn't work out. It's the machine's fault." Like, we need to find ways to make things happen and make them work for the better, and just take responsibility for them. But I'm very paranoid, honestly. Like, I'm very paranoid, not negatively. I'm very paranoid, and like every decision I take, I'm thinking maybe like 10 steps ahead, or 20, or God knows how many, because I need to make sure that everything happens in a proper way, and that every risk we take is properly calculated, and that we're in control of how we're going to be helping people, and have a contingency plan in case something happens. So honestly, I'm not afraid that something bad is going to happen. My sincere concern is how fast are we going to make these things happen, and but other than that, it's just a matter of time and not giving up. Yeah.
That's relieving to hear from a consumer of AI. So, anyways, I wanted to take a step back from our more technical conversation and introduce a segment to you that we have. It's called Chai Time. So if you have any water, or if you have any chai or coffee, or maybe just a drink, that you could.
Oh my God, I do.
Have some personal conversation.
Let me go get it.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Oh, awesome.
There we go.
I had but it's not a chai, it's matcha. Does that count or no?
Of course.
That would work.
If you were in person with us, we'd love to make you some of our chai as well.
Yes.
But anyways, this part of the podcast is just so we can have some personal conversation with a cup of chai or matcha. So I'm actually really interested in specifically your film background. This is more of a personal question, but what's your favorite film of all time? Your favorite movie of all time?
Oh God.
Really making him think on this one.
Out of all the questions, this is the hardest one.
Yeah, the AI stuff he's okay, the liabilities he's okay, but this is a hard hitting question.
I probably should have heated it up a bit more. Anyway, yeah, I just have this thing where I calculate that it's gonna need 5 minutes to like cool down. But anyway, honestly, it's Dune. Have you seen Dune?
I think it just came out, right? Last year.
2 years ago. That
it was with Timothy Chalamet, and I actually I've not seen it. I've been looking to see it. So that's more like sci-fi, right? Dune is more sci-fi, yeah. So jumping back to Star Wars, we mentioned Star Wars a little bit. Are you a Star Wars fan?
Yeah. Yeah, I am, but honestly, like the last three movies,
Yeah, we can agree on that.
Yeah.
I don't want to offend any listeners, but the last three movies, personally, I don't count them as the sequels. I don't count them as part of the original six.
Yeah. It will, forever in my heart be the original six movies. Arguably the original three, but I think the prequels.
No, personally, I mean, we come from the generation of the prequels. So personally, my favorite of the Star Wars is Revenge of the Sith. So I will die on that hill. Let me tell you, I will die on that hill.
I like the prequels. I like the prequels, but I think that the original, the 4, 5, 6, really the plot there was just so good, and I think that it was. I put it, at the top. I put it at the top three, honestly. Star Wars being at least the plot wise, I put it top, and then the prequels did a good job, but
Diego, I'm looking to hear your take on the Star Wars films.
I really like the first, like, well, like the first one chronologically, right? The Phantom Menace, I really liked it.
Yeah.
Clone Wars was really, really nice. Like it had its really good moments. The Clone Wars, like the animated,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I watched the whole thing as well. It was
yeah, it's just very beautifully done. It's very. It reminds me a lot, like like Star Wars was inspired on like Japanese samurai films. From this guy called Akira Kurosawa. Really, that dude's a master in filmmaking. But anyway, so those adventures were really nice. Revenge of the Sith, well, of course, it's Revenge of the Sith. It's just impossible to beat, and well, then there's A New Hope, which is I mean that's how it started. It's very, very well made. It's very The Empire Strikes Back. Honestly, I think that's my favorite one out of the original trilogy. I think Return. It was very masterfully done. I think I remember being a kid, coming out of the theater, seeing episode 3 in 2005. Was it? I think.
Yeah, I think it was around then.
Yeah, because I remember they had this campaign in Burger King. Anyway, yeah, they used to sell Star Wars flavored burgers.
Really?
Anyway, yeah, like they like it was just like their version of the Western bacon, but yeah. But anyway, and I was like, well, damn, like when's the next movie coming out? And then my dad was like, oh, that was it, son. Like just
15 years later.
Yeah.
And then
Disney did.
I think that I'm very passionate about this actually. What angers me the most about the sequels is how the original 6 was telling a story about Anakin Skywalker specifically, and eventually at the point where when he defeated this is a very interesting conversation we're having. Anyways, when he got to the point where he finally defeated Emperor Palpatine, he was bringing balance to the Force. And then they ruined that by bringing Palpatine back in the sequels. So, I think they did my boy Anakin wrong.
They did him wrong in so many levels.
Yeah.
The same way they did wrong. You guys don't watch anime, do you? Or do you?
A little bit.
Have you seen? No, maybe you haven't. Have you seen Attack on Titan or no?
I mean, I've heard of it. I've heard of the plot. I personally haven't seen it.
Okay, well, let's not get into it. Anyway. George Lucas had a very clear plan for episode 7, and he I believe he pitched it to Disney, but they were like, nah, let's do whatever is where we're gonna. It was actually gonna be Maul. Like it was his plan to bring Maul back anyway, regardless of what happened in the Clone Wars. Yeah, and he was gonna be like the next person bringing unbalance to the galaxy. And that's kind of like what the story was going to be about.
Yeah, I think Maul was such like a key figure in the Clone Wars. Anyways, I always love talking about Star Wars. I'm gonna keep talking on forever, so I need to help myself.
Right. Yeah,
but anyway, so I want to move it into the next question. So collaboration seems to be a key aspect of your work. whether that's you've garnered that from film and then eventually developed that in your tech development innovation part. Can you share some insights on how you engage with advisors and partners to create a positive impact in society through your AI projects? Because working with other coders, I'm a coder myself, and I can't work with my other coders. So can you please share your insight on that topic?
Basically, how to play well together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the main point.
Oh God, well, it's complicated, you know. I'd like to think I have zero ego. I'll just sit down and I'll just listen to people talk to like understand what kind of like what's their context, you know, or like what their deal is, or why are they so angry, you know. Oh my God, hold on, I almost spilled the matcha again. But some people don't have that, and there's people that are really, 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 really talented, severely talented, but they have zero confidence in themselves. So like they'll write the best, you know, like they'll write tons of code, you know, like they'll write tons of code, but they feel so insecure about it that they think that someone will tell them, well, you know, your code is like it has a place in the trash can, you know. Command D or whatever. Command backspace. Yeah, command backspace to delete it, right? And then there's people that are really good at making things happen, but they have no empathy, right? And like they mean well, but they'll just mistreat you, or they won't know how to communicate, you know. So for example, when we started the project and we were like, oh, you know what, like we're just gonna sacrifice the foreseeable future of our lives to make this AGI happen in the short term and not in 100 years. And then people were like, well, fine, let's do it. What do you need, right? And other people were like, nah, you're crazy. This is not going to happen. Blah, 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 blah. You can't do it because of this reason, because this reason. I'm like, okay, fine. Show me a better way. And then they're like, well, you know, they don't have the answers. They don't have the answers, and they don't have the capacity to think, you know. And when you don't have that capacity to try to understand another human being, and the patience, because, you know, we all learn in different ways, you know. Like me, for example, I take a really long time to learn something if it's something that I'm not experienced in, right? And I need pictures, and I need drawings, and I need someone to tell me. That's how I learn, sincerely, honestly. Other people, they don't need, you know, they'll just grab a book and they'll just do a Google search, and then they'll come back a month being an expert, you know.
Yeah.
I can do that depending on the topic, but sometimes I just need someone to put a gun in my face and be like, Diego, this is the reality, right? So how to play well together in a tech environment or any environment whatsoever. Just take the time to listen to the people around you, but you also need to not be afraid and be like, hey, you know what? Like, I'll listen to whatever it is that you want me to know about you, or the process that you're trying to get me into, but you need to do the same. And if that person isn't willing to do the same thing for you that you'd be willing to do for them, just take them out of the team. There's things that it's not your responsibility to heal them, right? If you really care for someone, you'll take the time to heal them and get them to the next level, but it's not your responsibility. And there's some people that they need a lot of love, a lot of patience, a lot of energy, and if you're willing to give it to them, good. But there's people that need a whole lifetime for that. And if they're not giving you any energy back in return, well, just get them out of your sight, you know? Life is too short.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you bring up. You know, I think teamwork is one of the most important part of, especially not only a startup, but especially a tech startup. And we were actually talking with one of our guests before, and she was emphasizing how when she goes in as an angel investor, goes in and analyzes a company, the first thing she looks at, it's not what they're, I mean, obviously what they're pitching is important, but the team, the management team is one of the most important parts. So that kind of ties into this question. What qualities and skills are you most interested in when considering new people you want to work with, new team members?
I want to hear this one. I think this is my favorite question so far.
Honestly, that that they just be good human beings and that's it. Things like skills can be taught. Things like tech stack can be taught. Things like names and processes and things like that, they can be learned, in time, those people out there saying, oh, you need to have a 20 years of experience for a technology that's just been around for 2 years, that doesn't make any sense,
Absolutely.
like just recently, like 7 years, I think, smart contracts. Like how long has a smart contract been a thing? Like it's been 5 years or 7 years, 10.
Definitely less than a decade.
Yeah, so like I remember like there's even like this meme about it, and it was like a serious thing on LinkedIn. Someone was posting like a job application for blockchain smart contract development, and they wanted like 15 years of experience, and it's like, well, dude, like that's not even possible. Like the tech stack hasn't even been out there for like 2 years, like it doesn't make any sense, right? The most important thing that we look for when well, like it depends, right? Like for example, like for the marketing team, we need to make sure that we need to make sure that they understand the technology at an operating level and that they don't hype people. That's the main thing, because there's a difference between basing a relationship, and by relationship I don't mean like the lovey-dovey one. I mean like a working relationship towards generating value together. A company will work with another company because the other company can help them with things that these people can't. So it's different reaching an understanding or a partnership when you understand exactly how you're going to be playing together and not just hyping them, with hot air. So that's one thing that we focus on when talking with people that are in the growth or marketing team, that they don't just mindlessly talk about the technology without understanding first how it's going to help the other person. That way it's a sincere relationship from the start. And for the tech team, honestly, like it's just people that just don't betray us, because we've had a lot of developers come from the big four companies, and they'll be like they'll be like, hey Diego, we just got laid off, right? We're looking for a new opportunity to build something, and this sounds like it'd be cool. And then we're like, okay, fine. Here's this. Take this code and have a look at it and make it better, right? Here's these other guidelines to make it better, right? Like, objectives. Like, we're not just going to tell you to figure it out on your own, right? And here's this other book that talks about, our company's internal processes. And then they'll be like, okay, thank you. And then they'll take it, and then they'll take it back to their home company, to one of the big four, and then they'll be like, I got this from Jada, let me back in, right? And give me a bonus, right? And then here's all the homework ready. That's one scenario. The other scenario is I never stopped working for this company in the first place, right? I was just looking for intellectual property and take it some other place, and now we have your architecture, we have your code, and we have it for free, right? In fact, you actually paid me to take this to them for free, So we make sure that people aren't going to be doing things like that, right? Because we have ways of finding out,
right?
Everything, Overall, we just want to work with nice human beings, We just want to work with nice human beings that want to create something new and that will take initiative for making things happen.
Yeah, you can teach skills, but you can't teach trust. I think that's the important part. So thank you for your insight. We have to wrap up. We want to be aware of. We want to be cognizant of your time. So Diego, thank you so much for being on Digital Leap with us and sharing your remarkable insights and vision for the future of technology and AI. We look forward to following the progress of Jada AI, your Jada AI project, and witnessing the impact it can have in our world. You truly are a innovator in the tech realm, and we're excited to have had this conversation with you. So thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you, friends.
And to the listeners, join us next week as we continue to dive into the world of tech and digital transformation. So thank you. Until next time.